This book answers the questions that atheists have a problem that Christians can't answer.
One of the crucial or most important reasons Revelation was even given, to identify who holds the spirit of prophecy.
That's why parables are so powerful, right? They're picture stories. The sower goes forth to sow, and that's just an image that's supposed to work in somebody's mind.
We live in a time where they're taking the Bible and they're detaching it from its patterns.
You look at all the things that happen, and many of those things would be blamed on God. So he just went ahead and cleared his name ahead of time.
Listen.
All this stuff's going to be
That's
happening.
good, brother.
Hold on. I like you.
That's
Keep
good,
talking.
brother.
Keep talking. So as we enter in Seal and Trumpet 3, I think we'll always go back and forth and review. So if somebody's just picking this particular thing up, it would be better if they would go back instead of just jumping in the seals. And I think they'll find that out. So we're going to enter into Seal 3 right now. It would be better if they...
Well, we gave a lengthy intro
It'd
to
be
the seals and trumpets in the first two seals and trumpets.
Yeah, it would just be
so
better.
if you go back one
we're not trying to hurt, we're not trying to tell you what to do in that regard. We think it would be better to do it that way, but why jump in the middle of the third seal when you can know, okay, let me get the overview for the seals and then go from one.
So the people that have been following us will have an advantage on understanding if they jump in where we are.
Yes. So now we're going to jump in. Brother, I want to just go ahead and have us read in Revelation 6, and let's get the third seal, verse 5, and we'll just start there. Again, this is an overview. The seals, I will do this by way of review because this repetition is priceless. Everything in the Revelation happens in the seven seals. The entire Revelation takes place within seven seals. That information alone will put you miles ahead in understanding. But everything in the Revelation takes place within the seven seals. And so what we've been doing is we've been reading a seal, going back to the corresponding trumpet, realizing that the seals are not opened and then the trumpets are sounded sometime later, but that when the seals are open, it's a time period within the history of mankind. So this time period is open. It begins at that moment, opened and loosed by Jesus Christ, but not fully understood until all seven seals are loosed. And that's why our rendition there has these seals placed in that manner, because you can loose one seal and it is in fact loose, but you don't know the fullness of what is in that book until all are loosed. The book lies open and now you're able to read it fully and understand it. So that's not strange either. That principle is not strange either, because in society, in your childhood or whatever it may be, in your adulthood, you've experienced things and you look back on them and reflecting back, you understand, okay, that's what was happening there. That's what I understand. So in the like manner, just similar to humanity, the same way we understand it better upon retrospect in this particular time, in the seventh time. Now, we're going to begin Revelation 6 and verse number 5. Please read that, brother.
And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, "Come and see." And I beheld, and lo, a black horse. And he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, "A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. And see thou hurt not the oil and the wine."
Brother, again, there are symbols. Someone says, please tell me what the symbols mean. We are addressing the symbols somewhat, like we're just referring to them and not turning to a lot of scriptures. But again, this is for an overview. We want our minds to be shaped in understanding. So we had the first seal that was open, and we already went through that. That's the morning time. That's the beginning of the gospel day, the beginning of the New Testament time, the dawn of the gospel day. Jesus and his apostles go out and they conquer right then, and they go forth to conquer. Then we see in the second seal, the second trumpet time, we see the beginnings of what we're going to call apostasy or falling away. And the beginnings of that now start some confusion in the world, as we see in the second parable of Matthew 13, beginning in Matthew 13, verse 24. how Jesus is earlier talking about a sower going forth to sow, and then we see beginning in verse 24 some confusion arising, some tares or some weeds, some poisonous weeds springing up in the middle of what was sown, and the desire of the people of God to uproot them, but it wasn't time to uproot them. And so we see that causing confusion, causing lack of growth. We also know that there's a falling away that's predicted of in the Bible. We read some about that in Acts 20, 20, 28, 29. Also in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, it talks about there will be a falling away.
Mm-hmm.
That falling away is from the faith. So we see in the second seal time, we see the red horse, which is exactly in opposition to the white horse.
Mm-hmm.
The white horse rides on. It's just not so visible. Its conquering power seems to be diminished on a visible, physically
Yes.
viewable scale. Okay. So this red horse represents the beginnings of the apostasy. Of course, there'll be more that go into that. And then we see the mountain, of course, Mount Zion, God's church, his only church, cast into the sea, basically talking about falls into the hands of men that would twist and pervert the gospel, the glorious gospel. That's part of the falling away. And then we also talked about some of the confusion that has brought because of false doctrine and people looking back and all they see is what is more visible. They don't really see the white horse, they see the red horse. In this case now, we have the onward progression of increased wickedness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? More wicked than the red horse, but still in opposition, still a reaction to the white horse. Actually, when we see these, now you need to think about this in the Revelation. When you see these horses, the red horse, now we see the black horse, we need to see this as the enemy, the devil's weakness.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that, okay, obviously the white horse rider has continued to progress through time, and now there is a shift, as it were, a shift in the approach, the reactionary approach to, okay,
So
that didn't work to the fullness, because you can only deceive people for so long.
I was going to say, I think
Please.
what you're trying to point out is the red horse had his moment
Yes, in time, in history.
in time where he prevailed in the public place.
Mhm.
He was the predominant influence.
The predominant
Apparently.
visible influence. Absolutely,
Apparently,
absolutely.
not truly, but apparently.
Yes, yes.
That the white horse rider went forth conquering and to conquer, meaning that white horse rider conquered the red horse rider.
Yes.
And what happened as a result of that conquering
Mhm.
was a new form of opposition to the white horse.
Yes.
So when we get to the black horse, the white horse, again, has not gone anywhere.
Mhm.
I thought about how Jesus said it. Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is like.
Yes.
When we look at that phrasing, you could be fooled or misled into thinking that God's church, his people, the kingdom, all synonymous terms, is actually like three measures of meal with leaven hid in it. When what Jesus is actually saying is the kingdom of heaven is under this kind of an atmosphere.
Yes.
This is what was seen during the time that the kingdom of heaven's reign.
Yes.
So when we come to the black horse, the kingdom of heaven hasn't gone anywhere.
Correct.
She's still riding forth conquering and to conquer.
And contrary to the black horse being an indication of the overturning of the kingdom,
Right.
the black horse is actually an indication that the kingdom is still in its onward progression of conquering.
Exactly.
Because the enemy now has to switch costumes.
It's no
I'll say it
longer a
that way.
red horse.
Right.
Right?
And it's not that the red horse changed to the black horse.
No.
But it is the same spirit of operation, only with a greater depth of wickedness and deception.
And deception.
Okay. In this particular case, the priest, anybody can see that priest has a cross.
Yes.
And somebody said, well, what are you trying to say? Okay. And you see that the priest has balances, and what the cry is, a measure of wheat for a penny, and two measures or three measures of barley? What's the scripture say? 3 measures?
I think it's 3. Yeah.
Thank you. So to get a measure of wheat for a penny and 3 measures of barley.
Yes.
for a penny, and then see that you hurt not the oil and the wine. Very highly symbolic language. Again, because we're giving an overview, we're not going to delve into every scripture. We have prophetic symbols that'll be available. We will be getting deeper into the specifics of it. But just know that this is symbolic of the word of God. Okay. The word is referred to oftentimes as wheat. Okay. But the scripture we were referring to in Matthew 13. And pardon us for not turning to these scriptures. Just enjoy the conversation. Listen to it again and again. Matthew 13:24. And even before that, Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man. He goes out and sows. Okay. So he's sowing. And basically he's putting seed in the earth. When we get to verse 24, we see that weeds are gathered up instead of wheat. So the crop of wheat is what the word of God is to yield in
That's
the
right.
earth in an agricultural setting. That's all it's talking about. Barley used to be just fodder, really.
That's right.
Now, I realize we'll eat some barley today, but that was commonly used in that agricultural age as food for animals. So it was basically a watering down, not allowing the fullness of what was considered the proper grain or the proper nourishment at that time, and having a large heaping measure of something that would be considered not very useful for human consumption at that time.
More
And
or less
so,
a substitute.
yes, yes, a food substitute, something to prevent the people from getting the full nutrition that they needed. In other words, add a little bit of truth, add a lot of error, and don't hurt. Hurt means use.
That's right.
Okay, some say, hey, don't hurt that bottle. Don't use that water up. Hurt not the oil and the wine. In other words, give them a little bit of truth with none of the Spirit of God. This book of the Bible, the words that are in this Bible can actually be used to slaughter people.
That's right.
Have been used. You're going to say something.
Yeah, I don't want to be out of turn here,
Please.
but something that was significant to me whenever I sort of thought about it. It does say, so what's the verse we're on? It's 5, right? 6. A measure of wheat for a penny. So I understand that a penny essentially was a day's wage.
That's right.
So during this time,
For the laborers, absolutely.
you could purchase a measure of wheat. I also understand now. Now, someone will help me where I'm mistaken. It's been a while since I studied this, but I would have understood a measure of wheat to be about what one person would consume in a day.
Mm.
And so the point being that there would be just enough subsistence to just go on one more day, which actually is a state of slavery, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
You work all day just enough
Spend-
to eat.
Spend your daily wages.
Your entire daily wages, everything you work for, your entire labor is given just so you can survive one more day to labor again. It's a state of perpetual slavery.
So you're talking about a spiritual condition, because that's what this
That's
is
right.
referring to.
Sure.
It's talking about a condition where people were under spiritual slavery.
That's right.
They were people who were eating wheat,
Mhm.
but at such a level that they weren't able to enjoy the full liberties that
Life more abundantly.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go.
And then some, there are various ways to look at it. Also, you could say, look, I could get more barley
Yeah, right.
for the same wage.
Mhm.
So what I'll do is I'll not take the wheat. I just have to eat what's available
That's
to me.
right.
I have to feed more people, and they're not even getting the proper nourishment that they need.
That's right.
For that.
Which
So
essentially is the same.
it's the
same
same
condition.
It's the same
right?
circumstance. And also, doesn't the Bible talk about in Proverbs how it talks about an unjust weight?
Mhm.
How an unjust measure, that is the essence of false religion. It is a failure to acknowledge the truth and a false balance and a false weight. So here, you were going to say something else, brother.
Well, just that the color black in other places in the scripture is associated with famine.
Yes, very good. The color black associated with famine, that's excellent. We even see some of this today. So when I say today, I'm not trying to transpose. I'm not trying to transpose and say this is in 2025.
Mhm.
Trying to say that at all. I'm saying the spirit that will give a little bit of truth and a lot of fluff or a lot of preservatives or a lot of artificial
Mhm.
for a look with
I'm
a little
glad
bit.
you said it,
Think-
because I was thinking, I'm like, this is a spirit, right?
It's a spirit.
Jesus
right.
showed that this is a
Thi-
spirit
this
that operated
this
at a
actually
certain time
happened
in
at
history.
that time. Yes.
And that same spirit, now we're not saying that spirit is here,
No.
but that same working we see works in the food systems
Yeah.
of our country.
We're not saying that that very thing is here. That happened at a moment of time as we've been walking through the progression of the gospel day. But the spirit of it,
In other words, we're not the food industry is not just trying to make a profit, it's operating through a spirit.
That's right.
yes,
That's what I'm saying. That's what we're saying.
it's beyond a profit. It's actually intentionally measuring out to the people false, artificial, and harmful substances that really should not be consumed.
That's right.
That's right.
In this particular case, again, barley, we understand at this point, but this particular case, barley is just used to signify or
It was
represent.
symbolic of.
Yes.
We're not saying barley in and of itself
course,
is bad,
of
right?
course.
Some people
It's-
can't eat wheat because they have
That's-
celiac disease.
e-
We're not
exact-
saying literal. We're just saying
Exactly.
principally
The
so.
representation is
We
that
often buy food that is partly food and mostly
stuff,
stuff.
food stuff. Yes, we buy food
Food,
stuff.
yeah, food products.
Yes,
Mhm.
and so the same time thing happens. And then also along with Christianity, it's some people think it's good enough to just say, "Hey, I'm a Christian. Open the Bible, the Word of God. Give me the Word. Believe in Jesus. Give him a clap of praise." And
Yes.
those things are. It is true to a Christian. It is true. Or to hear over and over and over and over again that you need to get saved, but you already are a Christian. You've actually been converted. But to continue to hear, and it's good. It's wheat. It's helpful. It's good to hear the old story, but there's a lack within this system to provide the full substance, the full nourishment that is needed, the full truth that is needed. But it does, quote unquote, borrow true things mingled with things that cannot bring the children to the full maturity that they need to be brought to.
Well, you can exist in a spiritual atmosphere like that if you really love God and you really want to serve God.
Mhm.
At certainly for a period of time, you can exist in that state,
Mhm.
right? There's just enough. There's just enough truth in the air, that if someone wants to serve God,
That's right.
God will preserve something.
Because they'll be at the throne.
That's right. But in a place where the spiritual atmosphere is dominated by this spirit, it is a state of it's a state of survival. It's a state of
Subsistence.
what's that?
Subsistence? Like a
Yes.
subsistence farmer?
Yeah, I don't know the word I'm looking-
Existence.
You're just existing. You're pining. It's
Survival
it's a
is
state
right.
Of, it's a state of spiritual poverty.
Yes.
Mhm.
And actually, that is a poverty mentality because you don't ever get a chance to put money away. You don't
Right.
ever get a chance to thrive because you're so busy just trying
Right.
to survive.
Make it
The-
another day.
Brother, the good times theme,
Mhm.
scratching and surviving, angling and jiving. Okay, I'm doing my best to survive. And so this spirit now, but now we see the cross. So there's an indication. This is an artist rendition, our artist rendition. There's an indication that the truth that is being used or presented is something that is from the Bible directly,
Mhm.
as opposed to not trying to get people to become Christians. I'm going to use what the Christians or
Yes,
the
yes.
apostles said, and I'm going to use a lot of other things to cause deception. Again, this is one reason why people don't quite comprehend Christianity, because what they've understood as Christianity, the visible representation of what they see as Christianity has not been Christianity
That's
at
right.
all.
It's been this horse, this
And
black
so,
horse,
and
this
so
rider.
what God is trying to help us to see is, okay, there's a white horse that went conquering and to conquer, and then there's the beginnings of this apostasy, or this falling away from that power, that visible falling away. The white horse never went anywhere. And then there's a progression and a deepening of wickedness now that is using Christian principles to deceive the masses and yet still be called Christianity.
Yes.
And it's a spirit symbolized or given by signification of a black horse. Very good.
Let me read the third trumpet.
Please.
In Revelation 8, verses 10 and 11. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. And the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter.
And so obviously these run concurrently. There's a seal that's open. Again, this is an actual time period in the earth that actually happened. The understanding of it, though people lived through it, I would think that I think it's clear that the Revelation helps us to understand the people didn't fully comprehend everything about the time period that they even lived in.
That's right.
And that's not even strange in human history either. And so now we see wormwood. So during this time period, the message is the trumpet's blown. We say, come and see. We're bidden to come and see. And when we look, we see the bitterness that accompanies, because wormwood is bitter. You ever had wormwood? Wormwood is deep. You never had it? Brother, you're not allowed.
I didn't think you're supposed to consume.
You're not allowed to preach another message.
He went literal.
Yeah.
He went literal.
You're not allowed. You're not allowed to preach another message until you take some wormwood. So it's actually very bitter. Wormwood can actually be good for you.
Yeah.
It can actually eliminate
in
parasites
moderation.
and help to heal you. But the bitterness, and I think that's the point of the text, the bitterness is deeply intense in wormwood. And so here we see some the signification is, well, if wormwood's good for you, why is it used bad? It's talking about bitterness.
Yeah.
It's symbolically representing bitterness. That's all. Okay. So this is a bitter religion. This is a bitter spirit. It leaves bitterness in people. It leaves bitterness in the earth. It is a reason for people to die. I'm going to say physically and spiritually.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay?
sir.
So it's not just symbolically saying die. It's talking about a time where people died, where wars are increasing, where there's more confusion, and it's represented by this spirit that again is fighting against the white horse rider that is going forward.
So it's
This is not strength. I'm sorry. This is not strength. I'm not saying it's not a strong spirit, but this is not an indication of the dominance of the devil.
right.
This is a reaction of wickedness to the onward progression of the white horse rider, which is at this point hardly visible at all physically.
So when you said that physical and spiritual death,
Mhm.
we're talking about wars, literal and religious. We're talking about famine, spiritual and literal. We're talking about disease, spiritual and literal, because they're never really disconnected. We can understand a society by these texts. We can understand of any position in history, any point in history, by asking what was the predominant spirit of that day and time, and that will help us to understand the people and the
Yes.
circumstances and the politics and the religion
Mhm.
of that day. And that's a part of the reason the revelation is so important, is it gives the answers. It provides the context and the framework that when we ask the questions, the pining questions, the questions that make John weep, the questions that causes humanity to groan, this provides those answers.
Brother, it does. And I want to mention here too, I think there would be people that would say, okay, the revelation provides the answers, but will you please provide them? So you're talking about this, will you? And again, our approach is not to detract or diminish or deflect. Our approach is that it would be better for you to at least know how to approach it and for you to ask within yourself, okay, what exactly took place after the original church? Okay, the Bible does say there was a falling away. It does say that men will rise up speaking perverse things. What are those perverse things? And you can track it yourself in history. Okay, when I see the black horse, what is the deepening of that? You're supposed to ask questions in yourselves. Now we're going to get deep into that after the overview, but our point is to spark something in your mind. You think about it this way, because when you're led there, when you're led by revelation there, and you have a real desire to know, and you know exactly how to look, then you can ask questions. And the questions, I think people watching now could be like, okay, I know what happened. Yeah, are you talking about, okay, so it's a religious thing. So would you be talking about this? You couldn't be talking about that, could you?
Right.
Is that what it is? And your mind, like the wheels are supposed to be turning and you're supposed to be firing, like brain cells are supposed to start getting lit. So we have this up.
Yeah, I just thought it would be important to help frame. Now, there's a lot. So this is a teaching timeline, right?
Yes.
And we have intentionally not used this because you can get lost in everything that's there. So I just wanted to highlight. Can we zoom on this? Get me just, yeah. So what we said was the white horse rider. You'll see them there at the to the left side of the top, underneath the numbers 270. So in between AD AD 30, AD 270. What we're saying is for a time period, the white horse rider was predominant, that shortly thereafter, the red horse, shortly thereafter, the black horse.
Yes. And even notice the direction.
And yeah, you notice the directions are against the
Yes,
grain,
yes, yes.
against the horse. All we're saying here to help, again, continue to contextualize what we're teaching is that these are approximate dates in a timeline of history / prophecy. They're the same thing, just depending on where you're standing.
Mhm.
That gives us a sense of understanding of what was happening when these spirits, these horses, these militant, aggressive, that's another part of this that we didn't
Mhm.
emphasize, that the horses are military symbols. So the red horse and the black horse are absolutely militant. They're not just casual.
Mhm.
This is an aggressive,
Yes.
warring machine
Mhm.
against the white horse, response against the white horse. I just wanted to post this quickly to show that this is happening in time. We've been saying it.
Yes.
I wanted to show it these are approximates. These aren't solid stone. The Bible
course.
doesn't say the date,
Of course.
but this gives us a frame of reference.
Like these things are happening. And it also helps us, like even as we're looking at this, okay, so AD 30, oh, there's the mountain on fire. Yes, Paul did say, ye are coming to Mount Zion, okay, or the writer of Hebrews. There's the woman that's clothed as, okay, good. There's the white horse rider. There are the enemies. Okay, so approximately we're dealing with 270. And we're just marching through. What God is doing is, in the Revelation, he's just simply marching through history. Well, why don't you say what it is? Well, technically, we are saying what it is.
That's right.
Because we're helping you to know this is how you frame it. And then you're going to now begin to understand, all right, so 270, that's okay, 530, are those dates locked down? No, these are approximate dates. And we see the onward progression of the white horse, and we see the opposition to the white horse. And this is how we are to understand the seals. And what God is doing is he's answering the questions. He's being audacious by using symbology to preserve and to extol his legacy. And he's being audacious in helping us to know this is the history of what will take place. John, who's watching the seals be opened, this is the history of what will take place beyond you. And it's written beforehand. This is all written in 96 AD. So how can we believe that it's true? This is written in 96 AD. And as we look, we see exactly, I think you're going to find that we see exactly what the Bible said in 96 AD is what continues to happen.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have another seal and trumpet we want to cover, but we had mentioned offline about possibly using this as a time to talk about a little more in depth about what happened behind the scenes with the white horse rider,
Yes, we
and
should.
particularly who helped to carry that forward against
We should.
this opposition. It seems like we ought to insert that before we get to the next seal and trumpet.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Don't you think?
I think we should because it's important here. So there's a falling away, and a lot of people that are Christians, people have different levels of scholarship. A lot of people that are Christians would know the church fathers or would have at least heard of the church fathers or read the church fathers. And what we're looking at is the people after the Apostle John. And what was the state of Christianity? Because Paul says it plainly. There's going to be a falling away. Okay, what exactly is happening? Who is the white horse is continuing to go? Who's falling away? Who's not falling away? And let's show. Do we have that information? Do we have that map?
Oh, the map.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, we do. Or do we have at least one of them?
We have two of them. One would be a little bit further in history.
No problem. This
So
is
let's set this up. So
Yes.
first of all, credit. Let's give credit.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to give credit to the Jude 3 Project for their
Absolutely.
outstanding work
Absolutely.
on Unspoken, their
Unspoken.
documentary about
Actually, you
history of
should check that
Christianity.
out.
It is
Unspoken.
very good.
And there are other things. There's a book. So Unspoken is outstanding.
Whitewash
Jude 3 Project.
Christianity,
Absolutely. Whitewash
That's a good one.
Christianity. Also, Free at Last.
Free at Last.
By Dr.
Dr.
Ellis.
Ellis.
Yes, it's excellent. So these are indications, or this is information given to help to understand really the conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
The conspiracy that exists to whiten Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
To make it, I would say, dangerously Eurocentric.
Yes. And most people, like most commentators, most understanding of everything happen to be Eurocentric or focused on basically what would be considered white people. You're going to say something.
The opening of the book, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee,
Mm.
he says most books about the American Indian or the Native American is, he says, it's standing in the east, looking west.
Mm-hmm.
He says what this book seeks to do is stand in the west and look east.
Mm.
In other words, he's saying, I'm trying to flip the perspective. Let's look at it from the perspective of the people who were already here,
Yes.
and not look at our history. The American history books, actually most world history books, look at the manifest destiny, the European colonization of what we call America,
Mhm.
from the European point of view.
Yes.
It's a Eurocentric viewpoint.
And everybody's white. Now,
Yes.
now, generally speaking, you were going to say something else, though.
I was just going to say the scriptures,
Mhm.
most scripture scholarship is Eurocentric, and that's dangerous. It's dangerous. It's not that Europe doesn't have a place, because Rome is a part of the scriptures,
course.
right? Europe is Rome's in Italy. Italy's part of
course.
Europe, but it totally leaves out in most scholarship, at least what makes it to the bookshelves,
Mhm.
and certainly what makes it in our public school systems, leaves out this African Asian seedbed of Christianity for what became, what really was a lot of what the White Horse Rider became, and how it moved
Absolutely.
in humanity before
Absolutely.
before it makes it far into hands
E-
like ours.
Even before, so we're talking about the White Horse Rider, that's the beginning of the gospel day. But even before the gospel day, during the Old Testament time, as we're building up, the sons of God, or the children of
That's
God
right.
that believed in that promise, were of every shade, of every ethnicity.
So back to the throne, we said they were
Yes.
universal. There were
Yes.
4 living creatures, 4 living beasts.
Yes.
It had to be a universal gathering of people, and it will be a universal gathering in the
Yes.
future, and has always
Yes.
had been. That in the Old Testament, we can go and find that multi-ethnic
Mhm.
representation around the throne. Those who believed were at the
Absolutely, we
throne.
can find the multi-ethnic representation. But strangely, and perhaps not so strangely, the black presence,
Mhm.
because I'll say not even African presence, because before Africa was referred to as Africa,
That's right.
the black presence in the Bible is strangely, I'm going to say intentionally ignored, as if everything that happened in this area. So we're looking at what would be modern day Africa, essentially. So you have Northern Africa, Libya, Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, Chad, Niger. Okay, so all of these things would not just be commonly known; it would more be presented as a white religion. And then, of course, you start having problems there, because you have African Americans here with a European American, and there's this idea in some of the black community, maybe less and less now, but still quite large, some of the black community, that Christianity is a white man's religion. It was used, of course, going forward by the slave master, and all the pictures of the angels are white. Moses is white, and Mary is white, and everybody's white. Here we see proof, which everybody knows, and it's difficult to hide information now. So now we see proof of the area where these events of the Bible were taking place.
So, to what you said about the Red Horse Rider, Jesus set something in place in advance that would help keep that from getting muddied, right, in the minds of people, which has happened.
Mhm.
That people have looked and said Christianity is a white man's religion. Well,
Mhm.
it was started in the Middle East, there in Israel, by a man who was Jewish, and we have problems there. We have a man from the Church of God who, in the 1940s, drew a representation of Christ that was extremely white,
Yes.
very Euro looking,
Mhm.
and not at all representative of the region that he would have come from,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
And that's a dangerous imagery in the narrative that has made people retroactively look back and say, well, it must be a white man's religion.
Mhm.
That we're saying Revelation clears that up.
It absolutely clears it up. Also, I love that this happened in this area, because in this area you get all manner of skin tone.
That's right.
And it shows that really skin tone is not the dominant societal
Mhm.
currency.
That's right.
Yes,
You,
sir.
you know
That's well said.
that is happening. It's not the dominant. Now, it's not that you don't recognize, oh, I don't see skin color. Well, that's not true. The Bible talks about black people. You have Moses' wife. There's actually a man, Simeon. Okay, he's called the black man, the black man in the Bible. There's Niger. There's Cushites. Okay, etc., etc., etc. So black people are in and throughout the Bible. The Queen of the South. Okay. In and throughout the Bible, black people were converted. There is Christianity, absolutely the seedbed of what would transpire to continue the white horse dominance, or the white horse's progression would have been because of black people, largely African people, what's known as Africa, and black people. And that's an important aspect of understanding as we're going through the seals, because without that, it's possible to totally eliminate the Christian influence
Hmm.
that black people held. And it's also possible to not understand how God in his mercy reached to all people of all skin tones, of all shades,
That's
of all
right.
ethnicities.
Right. So we had every people, kindred, nation,
Everybody.
tongue, right? We had
Everybody.
all of it. So what this chart does is it shows, so 150 is when that Clement of Alexandria would have been born. That's estimated to be his birth. So we're talking some 60 years after John has passed, right? Some 60 years. So we're not talking about a large gap between the narrative of what John wrote
Right.
and his intent
Mhm.
and what he would have had the privilege of understanding.
Less of a large gap because there's no internet.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
there's
Yes.
not the technology to shorten the time.
That's right.
Okay.
And so you have people after John, John's immediate disciples. I think Polycarp would be one, Ignatius would be another, Origen would be another,
Yes.
Tertullian, right? We're starting to pull these people in. Clement of Alexandria would have been a bishop of Alexandria who is clearly from Egypt. He's an African, what we would call today an African.
Absolutely, he's
Give
an
me the next one. So we have Tertullius, who at the Council of Nicaea,
Mhm.
when Arius was presenting the Arian doctrine against Christ, it was the brethren who came against that out of hiding, by the way, because again, as we know from the Revelation, at the time of the Council of Nicaea, Christians were in hiding.
Yes.
Christians were persecuted. Christians had been terribly persecuted under the Roman Empire through the pagan spirit.
Absolutely. The apostles had all been essentially martyred
That's
through
right.
that spirit.
And that spirit had continued some
Absolutely.
300 years into the course of Roman history.
Yes.
So there was trouble in the empire. Constantine says, get all these men together and let's sort this out, particularly along the lines of what we call the Trinity. It
Mhm.
was Tertullian, this man here from Tunisia, who said Trinity. He's the first known author of that term and that use of understanding the deity of Christ.
Triunity.
The
Yes.
triunity.
That's right.
Give me the next one, please. So we have Origen, we have Cyprian of Carthage. Again, these are all people. I think there's one more, perhaps. Athanasius. So what we're saying is, well into the 4th century,
Mhm.
God had used Africa as a seedbed for continuing to move the gospel forward,
Absolutely.
while there was a red horse,
Mhm.
and now we're coming into a black horse that was starting to rise
Yes.
up and fight. Well, where did it go? What happened to Christianity? Because if you're not careful, you'll read about the Council of Nicaea and the various councils that came, and brother,
And think
that stuff's a mess.
and they'll think that that's the beginning
You'll
of
think that's
Christianity.
Christianity,
Right.
and it's a mess to read.
And what the Revelation is showing.
It's a Wikipedia mess. Just Wikipedia. You'd be like,
Brother.
I don't know what all this is.
Yeah.
And it's the revelation that anchors your understanding.
What the Revelation is showing is that is not the beginning of Christianity at all. There's a gospel day, there's a first seal, there's a white horse, there's a red horse. Okay, so the Revelation is giving us the true history of what is understanding. It's actually centering our
Is there another one?
understanding.
Yeah, the Augustine.
It's actually centering our understanding. Now, this is important because all of these, what would be called church fathers, are in Africa. We talked about how the onward progression of the gospel, or the white horse, continued its onward conquering. And these church fathers, in the best way that they could, and even there's some down in Ethiopia,
Mm-hmm.
and many more, even later on. These brethren here kept Christianity alive and on its onward progression to the very best of their ability, and enabled Christianity to still be in the world. And these were brethren from Africa. This is the black influence. What's interesting is oftentimes we're familiar somewhat with conservative religion. And I'm not talking about conservative religion like Republicans. I'm talking about conservative like conservative. Okay. If anybody says I'm not temperate, just notice that there was one example of temperance right there. So they would read the church fathers and hold to the church fathers, believing that the church fathers were white men.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So they would have all the, hey, okay, yeah, I want Origen's writings, I want all these writings, and not knowing, not even understanding really, okay, I'm reading the works of black men.
Mm-hmm.
This also eliminates the fallacy, which I believe is a conspiracy, that way on down the line, which we'll get to, during the transatlantic slave trade, that Christians learned about, that the black people, the Africans, learned about Christianity from being enslaved. And they learned Christianity from their slave masters.
Hmm.
It's absolutely not true. Some of the people that were taken had to no doubt be Christians,
That's 100%.
because Christianity was spread throughout Africa, literally hundreds and hundreds, centuries and centuries before that. Christianity is spread. And well before that, there were followers of the promise that were black people. You couldn't even distinguish some of them from Africans. Paul was mistaken as an Egyptian,
Mm-hmm.
which means he looked like an Egyptian. He looked like he was an African. Okay. What Egyptians look, whatever they look like, they were Africans, and he was mistaken for that. And so there are numbers of times like that that we don't have the proper understanding about how the black influence
Right.
in Christianity and in the Bible played a key role, and that alone eliminates much of the false
Now,
history.
see, this is where somebody says, aha, I knew there was something to them.
What-
I knew there was something to this channel.
Okay,
I
well-
knew there was something to them.
What-
They had to bring up the black issue. See,
Oh, yeah.
I knew it.
Yeah.
That was what's wrong with this. Now they're done. We done
Yeah.
lost half our audience.
But you know what? But you know what? If we did lose half our audience, like if half our audience left because of that, we would actually want them to leave. Just
it's so true.
just being honest.
It's so
and,
true.
And we would also say that the revelation of Jesus Christ, the gospel, worked for them too. It eliminated
That's right.
the people that did not want to address any aspect of
It's
the
true.
truth.
It's true.
So we're not saying that Christianity is a black religion.
No.
We're saying Christianity
It's a human
is
religion.
a human mankind religion, and you can't deny the European influence, but neither can you deny the early black African influence, even before Africa was termed
Called
Africa.
Africa, which was a European term for the country.
Absolutely,
Right.
absolutely.
And so one of the men in that program, Unspoken, said that you could rightly say that Christianity could be counted as an indigenous religion of the African continent. That ancient, that embedded in the African society, so mixed in with the people of Africa, that remember that the Saharan or the Eastern Asian slave trade was longer and more devastating to Africans than the Atlantic slave trade.
It really was.
And it took in part, it took Christianity. God used that. The white horse marched in both directions and went in the whole world. Christianity
Absolutely.
makes it from Israel to China
Absolutely.
through this. This is actually, well, I don't want to get off that. But anyway,
Brother, yeah, you're right. I understand.
my point being that that the white horse continued on. The question is how, where?
Mhm.
Well, what we're just simply highlighting is the revelation helps us to understand that a correct understanding of Christianity shows us that it went right into Africa. Brother Randy, is there a pattern of God going into Africa to preserve his message?
Right there.
Not only there, but didn't Jesus get sent to Egypt?
Of course he did.
Or the Lord told Joseph, "You're going
And
to get
so
out
did
of here."
Joseph.
Right?
So the other Joseph.
The other Joseph went there.
So the other Joseph
so
was there.
the message of the promise, right?
The
image
children
of
of Israel
prophecy,
here
the
were there.
prophetic image, Genesis 3:15, which is what makes somebody a part of the throne. The belief in that makes them part of the throne, has been a worldwide work, and you have to see it that way. Otherwise, you get a dangerous Eurocentric Christian perspective that leaves people with the pining and the moaning
It
and the
does.
groaning, questions
It leaves them with
about what is this religion supposed to do for
it
me?
leaves them with unanswered questions, and also it permits the unaddressed issue of quote unquote race. Now we live in a time where everybody generally knows, even if they don't like it, they generally know there's one human race. So some things we're not so much dealing with in the same way, but you still don't know the resolution of it without the revelation of Jesus Christ. It's still not possible to know the resolution. I want to say one more thing too, without going off, and we can always cut this off and edit it. It's thought of in black communities, in some circles in black communities, depending on the demographic, that we have to get back as black people to our ancient religions, our ancient
All right.
African black religions.
Mhm.
And what we're saying is there have always been black people that believed in the promise of Genesis
Yes.
3:15,
Yes, sir.
right in the area of Africa. And sometimes and people say, "Hey, I'm black. You're black." I tell people, if I was to tell you how proud I am to be black, that you would be proud. I've said that I've said that in meetings with politicians, high level, and all of them white. And I've said that because I mean it. But brother, everybody black wasn't, you were a king, we were princes. Everybody black wasn't doing good. Okay? Because if we're reading about what it says with that black horse and that red horse, there was a time when people would rise up and speak perverse things. Some of that perversity was black people.
Yes, sir.
Some of that maniacal manipulationism was happening through black people. It was just that there are also black people that continue to believe the promise. So this false idea that we have to go back to our original roots and somehow all of us from the start to the finish were kings, brother, we had some rough and rugged, no good black kings that were absolutely fighting the promise.
That's right.
We just had a spread of the gospel in what was known as Africa, and God's always had a multi-ethnic, multicultural appeal to humanity. So it's not a matter of let's get back to our ancient religions and be what black people should be. Black people have always been Christians, and so have every other ethnicity that has chosen to believe.
Yeah. So let me just quickly point this out as we move on. So the Great Schism of 1054 divides the Byzantine from Rome. It creates the East-West dynamic. So we're well into the heart of what Roman Catholicism is. Now we're having
Yes.
to break off all these religious issues. Again, what we're seeing in those times is the work of that black horse.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're trying to highlight
Yes.
here.
Yes.
Now, what I want to highlight here is that I want you to see in that diaspora, there were good people inside of all. The white horse was still conquering, even though the black horse prevailed. That was what was prevailing. But I want to show you where did the white horse go?
Mhm.
The white horse stayed in these Asian and African regions. Does that mean it didn't go into the north? Of course it did.
Mhm.
But when we look at the original Oriental Eastern churches, these are where they were located.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives us, again, some sense of how did the gospel work? And it's the revelation that anchors that understanding.
Libya.
Without it,
Chad,
Right.
Ethiopia.
without that understanding, then it simply went to Rome.
Mhm.
That's where the gospel went. And from there,
From there, now we
it
talk
came-
about Christianity.
and by the way,
that's
it came from Peter to Rome,
Yes.
and Rome to the rest of the world.
And that's not true.
And it's just
That's
it's not true even close to being
It's
true.
simply
The
untrue.
kind of fantastical faith that you need to believe that can totally be healed. But the real faith with this book of the
But
Revelation.
the way history is written, it's easy to believe that it went from Peter all the way to Rome, and here we go, and that's what Christianity is. So what the Revelation is doing, it's opening up a whole new world, literally the world
Yes.
of understanding,
Yes.
literally, about how the gospel was spread, and we're seeing it in symbolic language as we open the seals and hear the trumpet sounding within the seals. This is regarding the black horse. Someone says, well, could you tell us plainly what it is? Well, we're actually there, but we want your minds to be engaged and know this is not just some fantasy book. You're saying something.
So this thought, what you all are bringing out is a push against. It's more than a push, but it's a push against the thought that, because somebody asked, well, so Christianity didn't go into Rome. It went into Africa. It did this and this. So what's the big deal? You know what I mean? Well, yeah, Christianity went everywhere, and there was a well, the thought that, and also during this time, um, you're talking about the time that's moving into the there's always been a popish spirit,
Mhm.
always,
Even before the Pope.
even before the Pope. There's always been a popish spirit.
Yes.
But when by the time popery takes hold in the earth, well, popery has to work with a narrative too.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? To try to get people's minds, to captivate people's minds into looking toward the cathedrals and the those places of worship that they had set up
The
in
relics,
big
the
towns.
images.
Yes, let me set you up. This is where the true Christianity was, and everywhere else they were heathens.
Mhm.
Right.
It's important.
Right.
So it's important to push this actually into the West, into the New World. It's important to do this so that people don't, so that that entity is able to isolate itself as the true church.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Because really, the battle of those horses, the battle of all the from the white horse rider to the you have the red, and then you have the and then we'll have the other ones coming up. The battle is really for the it's the ascendancy of who's true, what's true. Which one is the true church? Which one is where is the place of worship that the people of God should go to?
Mm-hmm.
Which horse should we join? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, you overwhelm one and with the media, with your media, and then you create this false, there's kind of a European and only European, it's a sense that everywhere else was totally heathen.
Mm-hmm.
And that you have this Christianity being championed by Constantine and the others that wanted to make sure that Christianity was they were the defenders of Christ, and it's not true.
Mm-hmm.
It's simply not true. But in order to do that, to do that,
They were actually accomplices to the various horses
yes,
that were prevailing at that time,
yes,
but saying they were of the white horse.
right,
Yes.
that's right.
And in understanding this also, we're understanding that Christianity is there quite centuries before things like Islam.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes.
So we're getting an understanding, okay, it's not what people think, okay? It's not what people understand. So if Christianity is spread there in the New Testament time, and we look back in the Old Testament time and see the influences of the Africans before they were Africa. Oh yeah, we're good. Thank you.
No, he's good. I was saying go back to the other.
So if we see that, we see the black influence before that, we see that the people that were believing in the promise that later became Christians, that actually was quite a bit before the spread of other religions
Now-
that are thought to be more
Were you going
ancient.
to say something?
Mm.
The question of Islam is a good question.
Mhm.
And if I don't say anything else, just on what we've talked about, we have already talked about Islam.
Absolutely.
We've already talked about its origin,
Absolutely.
its conditions. The revelation saw Islam coming and made a spot for it. And we're well into 1,000 years into the New Testament dispensation in 6 verses.
Mm.
Absolutely.
In 6 verses.
Absolutely a miracle of God through the revelation. And again, there's more specificity coming, but this is how mine should be framed. This is what I'm looking at when I open these seals, when I look at them being opened. When I hear the trumpet being sounded, this is what I'm reading. I'm reading this. This is the time frame that I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
It's very
Very
good.
good.
Very good.
Very informational.
Okay, so I think we're at the 4th seal.
We are. Is that all we are?
Yeah, we were working on the black horse, was just
We're on
third.
the fourth seal?
So we
Only,
got the
brother.
4th.
Okay, let's go.
Let's do the 4th. So we're back to Revelation 6.
Yes.
We'll read verses 7 and 8, and then we'll have the 4th trumpet as well. 6 verse 7. And when he had opened the 4th seal,
Mhm.
I heard the voice of the 4th beast say, "Come and see."
Come on.
And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the 4th part of the earth, to kill with sword and with hunger and with death and with the beasts of the earth.
Mm,
That's a lot.
mhm.
I'm going to read the fourth trumpet while we're here.
Please do.
Chapter 8, verse 12. And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. And I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the three angels which are yet to sound.
So more are to sound. Verse 12. Let's stay here with the trumpet. And the fourth angel sounded, and a third part of the sun was smitten, and a third part of the moon, and a third part of the stars, so as that the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. Here's obviously a condition that is not good.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, okay, where we're talking about luminaries, lights in heaven, and a large portion of the lights in heaven, the sun, third part, the moon, third part, and the stars, the third part, that are not only supposed to be shining, but that they're supposed to give indications of where we are in time. So here we are or they're given for signs and for seasons.
That's right.
So here we are during this time, and the sense is that the people of the time can't find exactly where they are in time. I can't locate exactly where I am. I don't have the purest light or the greatest understanding of what's happening. So things that should be shining, things that should be showing me seasons, things that should be revealing to me what is happening, I don't really have the understanding that I need to have. And there is a time in the Bible, even history recognizes that time, although they don't understand it fully. There's something called the Dark Ages, that time period. And then even after that, there's more residual effects of the Dark Ages that happens through religion. I do want to say something else about religion. Everything is religion.
Yes.
I'm going to say it like that. Everything is religion. People try to separate religion from what we're doing, or religion from belief, or keep church in church, or separate church from state, or what have you. But everything is founded or based on a belief system, what people are desiring to know, or what they know, or what they believe in, or what they pursue. Now, Revelation chapter 6, verse 8. No, verse 7. When he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, Come and see. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse. So here we see a pale horse. This horse is not just pale. The sense of it is like greenish, grayish, like sick to death. If you've seen somebody.
Yes. If you've seen somebody
Yeah.
nigh,
Yeah, sick to death. So this pale horse is
it's not just a light white.
yeah, it's not just a dingy
Yeah.
off-white color.
Yeah.
It's the look.
It's the look when
Of
you look
death.
at somebody, you say, "Oh, you look pale,
Yes.
gray, sickly."
Or someone not.
Someone said like even like a corpse would.
Yes.
yes, ashen.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. And a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, clearly. And hell, that word hell is Hades,
Mm-hmm.
followed with him. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth to kill with sword and with hunger and with death and with beasts of the earth. And just briefly in the overview, it would be best to understand it this way. This is a heightened wickedness, or an increased depth of wickedness, of all the succeeding or preceding horses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this does everything that the other horses, the other militant spirits have done, with greater force, greater power, and greater deception.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that greater deception is the fact that it has the appearance of, it's closer to the white horse appearance, but it doesn't look like the white horse. There's
Right.
a difference. It's closer to that appearance, but it doesn't exactly, we're not exactly looking like that, okay? So this is the heightened damage, more increased damage, utilizing I'm going to call it Christian principles
Right.
in a more deceptive way.
Notice in contrast to the black horse rider, he's not even dealing out barley. Like there's
Mm.
no, there's
He's just openly
right.
destroying people.
Yeah, it's actually while it appears in some ways to be closer
Mhm.
on face value to the white horse rider system, it's actually farther away.
Yes, it's actually worse. There's
Yeah,
been a
worse.
waxing, as the Bible says. There's been a waxing worse and worse as we continue on, and we have it illustrated as blood on the sword. So total destruction, utilizing the words that would be in this book,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what this is symbolically representing. Very good.
Yes.
So as we go forward, it's important to know. So, are you going to delve in these things? Absolutely. We'll name them. We'll talk about them. In the overview, we'll not do that. Everything is contained in 7, and all we've seen so far, which is important, all we've seen is the opening of the seals, and we've seen not only the original Christian church and belief go forward,
Mm-hmm.
but we've seen all of the enemies that have fought that onward march of victory. And it's been progressively getting worse and worse and worse. And the
Mhm.
key of making it worse is the use of language principles of the Christian faith
That's
of the
right.
white horse.
That's
That's
right.
what's making it worse. And that's what we're looking at. That's the sum total of what this has done. This is the summary of it. So
Mhm, mhm.
This is good. All right. 5th seal, chapter 6, verse number 9. It's going to take us through verse number 11. And when he had opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar
Mm.
the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? And white robes were given unto every one of them. And it was said unto them that they should rest yet for a little season, until their fellow servants also and their brethren that should be killed as they were should be fulfilled.
Mhm.
5th trumpet, chapter 9, 5th trumpet, again highlighting that these are not sequential, these are concurrent, seal and
Mhm.
trumpet working together. 5th trumpet, and the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace.
Mhm.
And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and upon them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. Do we want to read the whole part? Go to
Yes.
verse 12.
Yes.
Very good. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their forehead. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. And their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. And in those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them.
Mm.
And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the face of men. And they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. And they had breastplates, as it were breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. And they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. One woe is past, and behold, there cometh two woes more hereafter.
Okay.
All young people.
So we won't hold this long. So we've read opened the 5th seal, how the Lord opened the 5th seal. So we have the pale horse there, 1530, and then we have the souls under the altar. So you're talking about 1730. These are approximate dates. And I wanted to bring up all this. I don't want to confuse everybody because we're just focused on
Can we highlight that
the
section?
seals. Okay. So I don't want to confuse anybody. But yes. So
Next section over.
what we have here, it's close. He's got it.
That's in the middle.
You know what? I'll tell you what, go back to where you were. It's no problem because we're not studying the entirety of it. But the point I wanted to make here is at this point, we have progressed nearly 2,000 years. We're like 1,800 years. So you have 30 AD. So we progressed a long way within the gospel day. And the reason why I wanted to bring that up is because as you open the seal, you see this longing of the people. And they're saying, and we'll get more into that when we do something more than an overview, but they're saying, Lord, how long are we going to have to bear with this situation until we see the full extent of what the white horse rider's victory can bring us in the world? It's like the longing for the sons of God being manifest. Okay,
Yes.
so that's one thing that I wanted to bring out. Another thing, as we go over, brethren, to the sounding of the trumpet, you see the detail.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not 2 verses now.
Right. That's
Okay,
good.
so the Bible's giving us several verses and it's elaborating on it and giving a lot of detail and attention to detail. And it all sums up in where we're going to stop in the overview. We're going to focus on this. It all sums up in what the Bible calls a bottomless pit.
Yes.
So there are some details, there's some obvious symbology there that we're going to get as we get into it beyond an overview. But the sum total of it is that the people of God are longing, saying, listen, this is too long, Lord, help us. How long? How long is this going to go on? We'll get more into that. And then there's this lengthy description
Detailed.
that culminates with all kinds of meticulous details about locusts and false prophets and all that. And then it's talking about the angel or the minister
Mm-hmm.
of the bottomless pit.
Yes, sir.
And that is Apollyon or Abaddon or Apollyon, which is the destroyer. So it culminates in the bottomless pit, showing us that really all of the preceding things are all related to that bottomless pit.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
Everything that we see that has fought contrary to the white horse rider culminates or has its origin in the bottomless pit. The bottomless pit. Now, I'm going to say something that sounds ridiculous, and I'm not trying to insult anybody's intelligence. The bottomless pit is bottomless,
Yes, sir.
meaning that, okay, that's so yeah, it's obvious it's bottomless pit. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying the bottomless pit is bottomless, meaning the institutions, the entities, the systems, the horses, the symbolic representations that are fighting the white horse all the way up until this time, nearly 2,000 years at this point, have no basis in belief of any kind. And if you attach yourself to them, there is no limit to the depths that you can plummet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the indication of that, what we see in the world today, what we see happening in the world today, and what has always been happening in the world is almost, well, not even almost, the Bible talks about it not being human. It's not even human. The depths of degradation that
Yes, sir.
mankind has fallen to, the beliefs or lack of beliefs, or the murder and the mayhem and the oppression and the abuses and all of the religion has not yet reached its bottom. And what we have at the sounding of the fifth trumpet is we have the indication that it will never reach
That's
its
really
bottom.
good.
Okay, it will never reach its bottom. So remember when Paul said, other foundation can no man lay
Right.
than that is laid, which is Christ Jesus. So again, what Christians believe is that there is one solid place to stand. And we don't believe that because we want to mock other religions. We don't believe that. Christians don't believe that because they're just narcissistic and it
Right.
has to be their way. Christians believe that based in faith, based in an experience, based in an understanding, based in a revelation of what was written in prophecy before history walked into the prophecy. These things,
Yes.
these
Yes.
things were written beforehand so that we at this time can look back and say, it is bottomless. There's a religion that's coming against the true religion that the depths of it cannot be reached.
Mm-hmm.
It's a continual free fall of mayhem and oppressive belief. And we see it all around us. We saw it back then. We see it all around us in the world today. Things are happening, whether it's child trafficking, whether it's murder, whether it's drugs, abuses of all kinds, things that would be considered the height of lunacy, or people wouldn't even 10 years ago, people wouldn't even give you the time of day. Now they're considering, you know what, that might be happening. They might be doing that to our food.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you know what? Those religions might be doing that. Do you know people do snatch children?
Mhm.
Do you know people are actually selling children
Mm.
on the internet? They're actually selling them. So the depths, the point of all those details, and we'll get more into it, as I said, it ends us in the understanding that there's a bottomless pit, and there is a presider. There's someone presiding over the bottomless pit,
Mm-hmm.
who is the destroyer. And the Bible says the thief cometh not but for to kill, to steal, and to destroy. And it's showing the destructive nature toward humanity
Mhm.
of these religions that are coming against the white horse, but also the uplifting, human, enlightened, and divine nature of the religion of Jesus Christ that can
Yes.
actually rescue you from all these things. Not just rescue you like haphazardly or in some mysterious way, rescue you by exposing these things so that you can rest on a foundation as opposed to being in a bottomless pit.
I still hear the person asking, but why all of the other ones are so short and this one's so detailed?
Mhm.
And one of the things that I think about, what that reminds me of is when I was reading in Bible History by Alfred Edersheim.
Mhm.
He said the Bible is not a history of the world.
Mhm.
I'm paraphrasing. Instead, it's a history of the march of God's kingdom from beginning to end. And what it provides you in history is simply what it needs you to know to continue to move the narrative forward.
Mhm.
Here's the next person you need to see. In this case, here's the next seal and trumpet you need to hear and pay attention to. And just because it has additional information, it simply means that the Lord wanted us to gain information that
Mhm.
wasn't needed to be gained if we were to dig into
Mhm.
in order to follow this march of this understanding. Does that make sense?
Brother, it does make
The
sense.
second part of that is
It
this,
does make sense.
is that when this trumpet sounded, at the end of the sounding, it says, one woe is past. So not only do we have a detailed description of what happened, but we see that there's actually a celebration here of something that's reached its bottom and now we're coming out of it. There's a judgment that has finally been introduced that in the fourth trumpet said, woe to the inhabitants of the earth for these three trumpets that are coming. This trumpet serves as a turning point for what appears to be, it not appears, it's a bottomless pit. Something is really just,
Mhm.
it's just fallen out. There's nothing left. Yet the message is a woe has just come. A
Mhm.
judgment has been laid. Something God has done in the earth that will answer the Lord, how long?
Yes.
Right? How long reaches back?
Yes, it does.
Right? They're reaching back, groaning not just for their actual moment, not any more than John is weeping for all of humanity. These are groaning in the same way, saying, how long are we going to have pale, black, and red? I'm not saying that they were there at that moment. I'm just
Mhm.
saying they're looking at the total of human suffering, not just their moment. And at the end of this moment, we hear one woe has happened.
Mhm.
So something is turning in this story of the revelation that helps us to keep anchored and keep the context for what God is trying to give us and move us to, which is ultimately 7. Because remember,
Yes.
this is the opening of a seal, right? Fifth seal is open. We're closer to having the totality before us and the answer for what John was weeping for.
And if we're closer, that's another point that I feel like is the reason for the amplified understanding, or
Yes.
more verses, more description, because we're entering into a time in human history where more can be seen and understood.
That's right.
There was actually a time where more could not be
It's true.
easily
It's
understood.
true.
And even though we're not at 7 yet, we're actually entering into a time that we need to understand more of what's happening. And we'll get more into those details too. I really would love, we'll do this later, but I'd love to go to Matthew 13 now, where it talks about 30, 100-fold, 60-fold, 30, and then it comes right back out.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we're seeing is the coming out of that, like the going into darkness that we talked about, and then we're seeing how now it's spreading, and we're beginning to understand more and more. We're beginning to be able to grab a hold
Of this white horse.
of some of what the white horse, more of what the white horse is. It never went away, but at this time, the fifth seal, we're able to grab a hold of more of what that meant, not in its entirety,
That's right.
but understand more and get a hold more of it more
That's
than we
good.
could in the Black Horse time, etc. So
Yes. So we probably should take a break here.
Mhm.
Now, I'm saying that knowing already what 6 and 7 mean for us.
Mhm.
Our audience doesn't know, but it'd be a good spot to break here so that we can take 6 and 7, seal and trumpet, make that its own episode and learning, because out of that comes some other really critical pieces of the
Absolutely.
revelation that if we understand 6 and 7 kind of uniquely, not separate, but uniquely, then 1 through 5,
Mhm.
right? So today we did 3 through 5 for this. We did an intro to all of this. So when we get to 6 and 7, you still need to listen to first and second seal,
You do.
because we do a lengthy intro to it that,
Mhm.
have we just cut it and stick it in front of this, it would have worked for 3 through 5.
Mhm.
It'll work before 6 and 7 as well. So
It does.
why don't we?
And so we'll take a break. But just in review, all we're doing is going through the gospel day. That's what the seals are. And all the Lord is doing, He's telling us, we're reading what He wrote before it happened.
He's writing the victory story.
He's writing the true history, and He's just doing it in symbolic language, and we're picking that up.